Hello, and thank you for joining us for the second in our webinar series focusing on tough conversations that are critical for culture changes on campuses to reduce equity gaps in student success. We all know that higher education institutions in the United States need to plan now for the coming shifting numbers and demographics of our high school graduates across the country. Our series is really designed so that you can hear the strategies of the featured campuses and what they're doing to create and sustain their cultures that result in better success for all their students. We go to the next slide. Great. I am Sally Johnstone, Executive Director of the Foundation for Student Success, and joining me on this webinar today will be Ed Bonahue and Naima Brown from Santa Fe College in Florida, Roderick Land from Salt Lake Community College in Utah, Paul Dussault from University of South Florida, and Amanda Quintero from California State University, Channel Islands. Let me explain a little bit of our format for today. Each of our panelists will briefly tell their campus's story, including things they learned along the way. After all of them have spoken, we'll move into discussions for the second half of our time together. While panelists are telling their stories, please post any questions that you'd like discussed. My colleagues Sarah Torres Lugo and Stacy Ziss will be monitoring the questions and comments submitted in the Q&A area as we go. Now, to pose a question or a comment, just click on the Q&A in the controls. If you happen to be in full screen mode, you might need to hover your mouse over your screen to make the controls visible. Once you click on the Q&A, a window appears. Type in your question and click send to submit it. If you want to pose a question to a specific panelist, please make sure to begin the question with the name of that panelist or their institution. The chat and hand raising functions won't really be monitored during this, so please do use the Q&A feature. The goal of the Foundation for Student Success is to increase the success of Black, Latino, and American Indian students using data-affirmed practices. To get a sense of our history, please go to the FSS website, and you can see that on the screen. The Foundation for Student Success is currently working with 7 mentor campuses and 21 mentee campuses across the country to help change campus cultures to reduce equity gaps and increase success for all students. The map you see indicates which states have campuses now working with the Foundation for Student Success. The darker states have mentor institutions. By the way, California and Florida each have 2. And the lighter colored ones have mentee institutions. Now, for the past year, these 28 public colleges and universities have worked together in pods of 4 institutions each, learning from one another. We know changing the culture of a campus is a strange and wondrous process, and it really does take years to accomplish. We also know that there is no simple way to shift a culture. Our mentor and mentee institutions are exploring all the ways to make that happen. And as I mentioned, the lessons and strategies these campuses used and are using serve as the basis for this and our upcoming webinars. There are case studies, progress reports, and other resources on the FSS website. Now, I am sure many of you have seen this information before, but it's worth considering in light of some campus planning. As the Witchy publication, Knocking at the College Door, makes really clear, we're looking at a future with declining numbers of high school graduates heading to college. Also, using the WICHE research, these are the states that can expect growth in the number of Black and/or Latino high school grads. And that growth is not predicted to be sufficient to make up for the overall decline that you saw in the last slide. But campus communities must be prepared to help all these students succeed if states are to remain economically viable. There is an urgency to this, and all of our 28 mentor and mentee campus communities have realized that. We're all learning new ways to work together to assure every student is supported to graduation. Now, today we're going to examine who owns student success on campuses. Is it the academic leadership, the student support leadership, or is it both? Well, let's start with hearing from Ed Bonahue and Naima Brown from Santa Fe College.
Naima and I are together, and we hope that everyone can hear us. We work so closely together that we are together in Naima's office. We're logged on separately, but we trust everyone will be okay if we present together. We want to tell you a little bit about Santa Fe College. And if you show the first slide, please. Need a slide to advance. Are we unmuted?
Do you hear us?
Yes, we can, and we have the next slide up.
Thank you. So for Santa Fe College, we're one of 28 community colleges in the Florida college system. Although our name is Santa Fe College, like many of the community colleges in Florida, we offer a limited number of baccalaureate degrees in a kind of a fulfillment of our workforce mission, and those have been a big compliment to our communities. Santa Fe has been part of the national conversation on the completion agenda for many years, and our president has been long-serving in the college since 2002. He represents us on the board of the American Association of Community Colleges, the American Council of Education, the League for Innovation, and these national connections are extremely important for us in terms of keeping us plugged into the national conversation on completion and equity. And we were gratified that a lot of our good work was recognized in 2015 by the award of the Aspen Prize for Community College Excellence.
And as a comprehensive college, we serve a diverse population of students. 65% of our students are pursuing an AA degree, 30% are pursuing certificates and CTE degrees, and 5% are pursuing baccalaureate degrees here at Santa Fe College. The majority, or 61% of our students, are part-time. While students come from every county in the state to attend our college, our enrollment doesn't really reflect the composition of our service area. Relatively speaking, African American and white students are underrepresented, and Hispanic students, for the very first time, are overrepresented in our enrollment.
In the next slide, we want to talk a little bit about this question of who owns student success. And we really feel like it has begun with our president creating a sense of mission. We'll talk about culture as well. But this question of leadership is really crucial for us because the president has kind of set the tone for the college. Within academic affairs and student affairs, each of us has our own activities, each of us has our own perspectives, but they are aligned as part of a mission and a commitment that's begun with the presidential leadership. So years ago, 2002, when the president first arrived, he began our minority male retention and recruitment program, My Brother's Keeper, and because it was where the data indicated that we had the greatest strides to make, where we needed to do a better job with recruitment and where we had the greatest disparity in terms of retention and completion. He also began initiatives to do more outreach and service to underserved African American communities in our 2-county service district. And we started a faith-based alliance, working with a pastors network in both communities that would allow us to be a little bit better plugged into the community. What's really crucial to understand too about the leadership is that with the president's support, we have recurring resources committed to student success initiatives, such as My Brother's Keeper. It's not just a flash in the pan. Every year it has its own budget item, it has its own director, it has its own budget line for activities. The student success programming that we do is funded on a recurring basis. And then really the president has promoted a culture of empowerment and accountability across the college so that every individual can, whether in student affairs or academic affairs, make their own contributions to student success and further the equity agenda. We'll talk a little bit more specifically about that next. And next slide, please.
Student success here is decentralized. All divisions of the college are charged with contributing to the mission of student success. And with our Navigating the College Experience project, there's a partnership between academic affairs and student affairs to foster overall student success while we're promoting student equity. Our faculty in academic affairs set high expectations and make note early on, beginning in the first weeks of the semester, if students are engaging in concerning behaviors that could predict problems with success in the future. So for instance, faculty note if students miss the class or are missing assignments, if they're lacking attention in class, if they're missing tests, and faculty use Grades First to note this to students, and the message goes out to students and to their advisors, but that's not all. Our advisors reply to those messages and reach out to the students and encourage them to contact their faculty and put them in touch with resources that they might need. But here at Santa Fe College, we also have support specialists in the programs that Dr. Bonahue spoke about. So in our MBK program for Black males, we've got a specialist who's also reaching out to those students who he's developed a relationship with and engaged in mentoring, and he's helping them to navigate the experience, helping them to end up successful, to get the resources that they need. And also our CAP program with underrepresented students, our Finish at the Top program that helps students who have stopped out and provides them with support to come back and earn their degree, and our student support services. So in all these different programs that are targeting first generation, underrepresented minorities, those programs for low-income students have an added benefit of reaching out to the student in addition to the advising. So these different offices have built a strong and significant relationship with the student. So we're helping them, and we're also tracking data on the number of faculty members who are sending out those reports, as well as the resources that students are accessing as a result of those reports.
And within academic affairs, we're trying not just to send out alerts that students are getting off track. So this bullet on here, the Center for Teaching Technology and Transformation, is really instruction oriented. We've tried to push out best practices to faculty, to work hand in hand with advisors and give faculty more information about implicit bias, about the legacy of institutional racism, about the difference between equity and equality, and it's, in a way, it's helped faculty kind of understand more about their contributions to equity. And so in the next slide, one of the things we've done is try to push data to all stakeholders that disaggregates student success. And if this is something that's not being done at a college campus, it's always revealing because, hey, the average might look look fine, but if you disaggregate it, then you see that it tells different stories for different populations. In this slide, you can see that although we still have a persistent disparity that we're continuing to work on, we have succeeded over the years narrowing the disparity from about 30 points to maybe 20 points. Lessons learned going forward, again, push your success data out to all stakeholders and let data drive that change agenda. Don't be afraid to have hard conversations, especially when it comes to equity, bias, change that needs to happen in the institution. I think it's so important to try to get past the pilot phases, the kind of beginning programs, and try to scale up all your student success and equity programs and do for all students what you would do for maybe just a pilot group. And then finally, you know, a success agenda, an equity agenda requires training and professional development at all levels. So whether it's faculty, whether it's staff, there's got to be resources, there's got to be a commitment to training to make it possible for everybody to participate in this kind of agenda for a college. The net result is on the final slide, and of course that's about graduation, that's about completion. The best day on campus for us is when our students get to put on their cap and gowns, and that's the last image that we'll leave you with. So thanks very much, and we'll pass it back to Sally.
So it looks like we might have lost Sally for a moment, but I'll go ahead and introduce our next panelist. This is Roderick Land, the Special Assistant to President and Chief Diversity Officer at Salt Lake Community College.
And I'm just going to remind you all, now that I'm off mute and the train has gone by, that if you have any questions, please be sure to post them, particularly questions that anything that Ed and Naima may have said. So on to Salt Lake Community College.
Yes, good afternoon. How's everybody doing? My name is Roderick Land, as mentioned before, and I serve as a Special Assistant to the President and also the Chief Diversity Officer for Salt Lake Community College. Just in terms of giving you some context about the question about who owns student success, I would suggest that I sit in a very unique position here at the college where I don't have any territory per se where I'm fighting over, and also have the wonderful opportunity to build relationships beyond just my respective area. And so for me, I would just answer the question and say that everybody owns student success first and foremost. But to give you more context about Salt Lake Community College, we're the only comprehensive college in the state of Utah. We service over 60,000 students, both credit and non-credit, and we are the most diverse higher ed institution within the state. And to give you some context about our students, if we go to the next slide, 70% of our students are employed. Over 55% of our students are first generation, and nearly 50% are awarded financial aid of some kind. Additionally, we see that we have about 21% of our students who are considered to be self-identified as an ethnic minority or multiracial demographic, and that breaks down to about 17% Latinx, about 1.3% Pacific Islander, about 3% Asian, just under 1% for Native Americans, and about 2% for African Americans. So that's kind of give you some context in terms of who our students are and how we are situated as an institution. But as we think about all that diversity, if you want to call it that, within the state of Utah, we have to ask ourselves the question, how does that then impact the way that we do our work here at the college? And so having said that, it's very critical for us to really think about that work and what it means. So we're actually in the midst of doing or engaging in a Pathways project. And so in the midst of that, we've had very robust conversations about student success, what it means and what it looks like, and what are some of the strategies. And so being a part of the cabinet, I do have the opportunity to work across campus. But I would say what's most important about this conversation is that we really do have a committed group of people, more specifically as it relates to our provost for academic affairs and our vice president for student affairs. What they do is essentially they have bi-weekly meetings. So you're not getting that tension about academic affairs and student affairs and who owns this success. So what they do is they have the bi-weekly meetings and have those conversations more robustly about how do those two big monsters of the divisions intersect and interact and be more collaborative in nature to ensure that we do see success within our students. And so if we can go to the next slide, what I would argue is that the work of student success is grounded in equity, diversity, and inclusivity, particularly as it relates to students of color. Now, this may seem like a very arbitrary picture, but what I want to share with this picture is that this work is not easy, right? It's like a lot of trudging through mud, especially as you're talking about how do we reimagine the work that we do. Some people are kind of mired in their work that they've been doing for the past 5, 10, 15, 20 some odd years. And to get them to really reimagine and rethink how a faculty member may do assignment design or curriculum design for that matter, and how policies and procedures may actually need to shift because of the shifting demographics. So these have major implications to say how we do our work, and you will meet a lot of resistance along the way. So to the degree that we can stay committed to the work in spite of the hardness of it, we will see the success within our students. And if you can go to the next slide, just really quick, and I'll finish up with my conversation. So over the course of the 3 years that I've been here, and you can just let all the bullet points go, it's fine. As over the course of the 3 years that I've been here, we've made tremendous strides in terms of really putting equity, diversity, and inclusivity at the center of our conversations, whether it's talking about student success, talking about hires, policies and procedures. To me, that's the foundation of student success, right? So every division and every department has a diversity plan. We have goals in place that are measurable for sure, particularly as it relates to retention, access, and completion for that matter. Another piece, as I think about the college, what has happened over the course, I would say over the past few years, I'll even say maybe 10 to 11 years. Diversity has really increased in terms of our student demographic, but it has not necessarily shifted within our faculty, which I think is problematic to a large degree. So even though the student demographics have shifted, but our faculty in terms of diversity has shifted by 1% over the past 10 or 11 years. And so for me, that's a negative growth rate. And so we've put some things in place to really try to augment how we are doing our hiring as it relates to our hiring policies, but then also to be much more intentional and have some kind of intervention with our diverse faculty fellows program. This way, it gives us the opportunity to really bring in a diverse cohort of faculty and to really reimagine how we're hiring people on this campus. The other piece, I would say, is a diversity report and the retention audit, which I would say go hand in hand, because the thing is, we may not know what exactly we're doing as a collective until we do that audit for retention. A lot of folks may make the argument that all the things that they do, they are in the name of retention, but are they having an impact? Are they effective and are they efficient? And so that coupled with a diversity report in terms of the things that we're doing to help students feel welcomed on campus becomes critically important to the success of our students and how we engage our students for that matter. And then the last piece I would say with the equity-minded practitioners designation is designed for faculty and staff to really hone in on their skills or their understanding around equity and diversity issues. Because as we see, again, the demographics shifting, we have to come back to that question, how does that then impact the work that we're doing, not only just within the classroom, but then also how we're engaging our students on the front lines within financial aid, within career services, within advising, and all those things on the student affairs side as well. So these are some of the things that we have put in place and are consistently, constantly working on to really try to move that needle on retention and completion at the college. And I will just leave it there, and I will be more than happy to address any questions on the back end once everybody else has finished with their presentation. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Roderick. That was very informative. And I'd like to remind the audience to please go ahead and post any questions you have for him or discussion items that maybe his remarks have sort of stimulated. Well, let's move on to the University of South Florida and their story of campus leadership for student success.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Sally. I'm happy to be with you all this afternoon to share with you a little bit about the student success movement at the University of South Florida. As you'll see in the next slide, this major global research university located in Tampa, Florida, enrolls about 43,000 students. About 30,000 of them are undergraduate students. And over the last 17 years, under the leadership of President Judy Genschaft, the university has been deliberately engaged in a transformative process. We've all been trying to boost our research profile and transform the culture and performance of our Student Success Initiative as the university aims toward an invitation to join the AAU at some point. So the university has been on a strategic plan for some time, and student success is at the heart of that plan. In fact, it's the #1 strategic objective. As you'll see, the next slide, we've made significant, even dramatic progress in improving our 6-year graduation rate, one of the key metrics that we use to evaluate our performance, increasing from 51 to 71% 6-year grad rate. And the 4-year grad rate has also gone up during that same time period from 43 to 60%. But what I'll point out to you on this slide is how the performance or the rate of improvement slowed down in 2013 to 2016. You'll see that our 6-year graduation rate hit what we call a performance plateau. And that led us to start thinking about things to do differently to elevate our performance. At the same time, we didn't want to upset the trajectory that we were on, in that, as you can see in the slide dealing with race and ethnicity, that along the way, we had also eliminated the achievement gap by race and ethnicity. Beginning with the 2008 cohort, the 6-year grad rate for that cohort showed that Black and Hispanic students had finally begun to outperform white students, and that gap has just continued, so that with the last cohort, 2011, Black 6-year graduation rate hit nearly 74% compared to white students at about 68%, a reflection of our belief that all students will succeed and our great interest in assuring that we have a diverse enrollment, but we also produce equity in outcomes. We've also defined diversity very broadly, so that we're also looking for equity in attainment by socioeconomic status. So the slide on Pell versus non-Pell students also shows that we've nearly achieved parity there by income, so that lower income students are about at the same graduation rates as higher income students. Now, all this is a bit difficult to explain. We've even surprised ourselves, but for the topic of today about who owns student success and how we're setting ourselves up to administer student success, I thought I'd share with you the organizational chart for the Division of Student Affairs and Student Success. A couple of years ago, our provost decided to integrate 3 traditionally separate units: enrollment planning and management, student affairs, and undergraduate studies. And so we integrated all 3 units into one, which I have the dubious honor of running these days, with 7 AVPs in charge of a unit that employs 630 people full-time and another almost 2,000 people part-time. The design or the objective in integrating these units was to break down all remaining silos and get all units that touch and support an undergraduate student experience to work together in a more deliberate and strategic way. So within this unit, we have everything from Greek life to student rights and responsibilities, the registrar, financial aid, campus rec, counseling. It's all in one big unit that has the primary responsibility and nearly all of the authority for promoting the success of all undergraduate students at the University of South Florida. The early results of this are promising, in that one of the main reasons for bringing us all together was to move the university off that so-called performance plateau. And so we did that and bumped our 6-year graduation rate from 68 to 71 And our first year retention rate, which had also plateaued at about 88, also jumped up to 90%, in large part because of coordinating more deliberate programs and practices to promote student success. But while this unit, Student Affairs and Student Success, has the primary authority and responsibility for promoting undergraduate student success, I'm also fortunate, and the university is fortunate, in that the president and the provost have also made it clear that everybody on campus has a responsibility to play in student success. So I shared with you another slide that shows for you just a few of the metrics that are used to evaluate the performance of colleges and deans. Each college dean has about 57 metrics that the provost uses to plan performance and hold deans accountable for reaching certain targets. So our job in promoting undergraduate student success is helped along by the fact that every college and indeed every unit has performance metrics set. And so the colleges then are engaged with us in efforts to promote high impact practices and embed them into courses across the undergraduate curriculum. And beyond that, we also disaggregate retention and graduation rates by college so that we can evaluate performance. And so we'll know which colleges are underperforming, which colleges can do a better job to help us hit our metrics. That means then my job to promote student success across the campus is helped out. I don't have to go directly to deans and beg them, hope that they'll help me out. They also have a vested interest in promoting student success because we operate in a state, of course, that has a number of metrics that it uses to evaluate performance and allocates funding based in large part on how universities attain certain metrics. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Sally. Thank you all.
Thank you, Paul. And again, for the audience, don't forget to post questions. Our final story today comes from California State University, Channel Islands.
Thank you, Sally. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Amanda Quintero, and I serve as the Executive Director of Student Academic Success and Equity Initiatives. And you can go ahead and change the slide, thank you. And many of you might not know this, but CSU Channel Islands is a relatively new university established in 2002. Our institution is the youngest and 23rd university of the California State University system. And in our short history, some of our guiding principles for creating shared ownership for student success have been that we are mission, values, and purpose-driven. We engage in strategic resource development for accountability and collective impact. We have a strong commitment to shared leadership and building cross-divisional partnerships. And we have worked hard to develop a shared agenda for student success and equity. And at the heart of this work is our intentional focus on innovating for student success. Next slide, please. Since our founding, one of our articulated values has always been that our population reflects the diversity of our region, where the largest racial and ethnic minority group is Latinos. Over the past 8 years, our Hispanic Latinx student population has grown from 26% in fall 2009 to 50% as of fall 2017. Currently, 59% of our students identify as first-generation college students, and 49% are Pell Grant recipients. I'm presenting this data as pre and post HSI status because achieving HSI status in fall 2010 was a defining moment for our campus. It allowed us to engage with our student data in such a way that communicated a sense of urgency to be an institution that is culturally responsive to a growing diverse student population. Although we have been mission and values driven at our core, our HSI status allowed us to expand our purpose. And we used this opportunity to develop a cross-divisional agenda for student success and equity by bringing awareness to the ways in which the institution must change to be responsive to the needs of our diverse student population. Next slide. What this visual represents is how we have leveraged $26 million in Hispanic serving institutional change grants over an 8-year period to help build our capacity for cross-divisional and regional student success partnerships that advance an equity agenda. The boxes that you see listed on the slide represent a range of 5-year multi-million-dollar projects that promote shared ownership for student success by connecting cross-divisional student success strategies and interventions to university-articulated strategic goals. And in this way, the success of these HSI institutional grants collectively impact broader institutional goals, such as facilitating access to educational opportunity in the region, increasing first-year student retention and persistence, improving graduation rates for first-time freshmen and transfer students, and closing equity gaps in achievement and degree completion. Next slide. Perhaps the most important element to developing shared ownership for student success is the unwavering commitment by our campus leadership to cultivate cross-divisional partnerships. One framework that has been effective in breaking down silos is our Strategic Initiatives Steering Committee structure, which consists of the President's Cabinet, a staff and faculty representative, the Faculty Senate Chair, and a student government representative. The committee is charged with sponsoring campus-wide conversations to develop, prioritize, and recommend strategic initiatives to our president, Dr. Erica Betts. And one of the ways we have engaged in this work is through a campus-wide World Cafe model focused on 4 student success areas: academic placement and support, capacity and sustainability, communicating clear curricular pathways, and integrative excellence. What I have found helpful about this framework is that it engages the entire campus in conversations and recommended actions to improve student success and equity outcomes. Our president has also modeled her commitment to shared leadership through inclusive and culturally relevant staff and faculty development. She recently launched the President CI Connect program, and CI Connect is a 2-year, high-level, immersive, and behind-the-scenes culture initiative with 3 core objectives. The first is to cultivate and strengthen relationships between divisions. The second is to provide cohort members with a broad perspective of CSU Channel Islands and how the divisions are interconnected. And the third is to illustrate how each area supports the university mission. In addition, President Beck launched our first cross-divisional leadership retreat with all of the executive leadership teams from each division to center our work on our mission, values, and our shared responsibility for student success and equity. Finally, we have been purposeful about assembling teams across student affairs and academic affairs to examine issues, share in problem solving, to attend conferences to learn together, and to present together on our shared student success innovations. Next slide. By focusing the work on a shared agenda for student success and equity, we are able to promote a broader understanding of the equity gaps that exist at CSU Channel Islands. We engage intentionally in the practice of leveraging institutional grants that share resources across divisions, departments, and programs, and that enable us to build cross-divisional teams that focus on removing barriers that impede student success and equity. One example of this cross-divisional teamwork is how we are re-engineering our new student orientation by leveraging some of this grant support for the development of online modules so that we can create more time at our in-person orientation for students to meet with faculty, academic advisors, and to build their peer-to-peer networks so that they can start strong in their first year. We also focus on culturally relevant programming, and that focus is really on shifting the institutional culture for our students and their families. We engage in this work jointly as a cross-divisional team. One example is our Noche de Familia program, which is an offshoot of our Family Weekend. Many of us noticed that a group of parents at Family Weekend was unable to be active participants due to language barriers. So the idea of Noche de Familia was to have a whole family and community approach to supporting student success. Spanish-speaking faculty, academic and student affairs professionals, and the broader university community host this event annually. And the objective is to make visible the role that we all have in facilitating student success. And what we learned is far too many of our first generation Spanish speaking parents do not have multiple entry points to engage with the university. Noche de Familia creates a welcoming and engaging space for Spanish speaking parents to be active participants in the success of their children. We also invite the surrounding communities to this event, specifically community-based organizations, community college and high school students and their families, to spend the evening with us so that they can directly hear from our students about the college experience. We typically highlight a parent speaker, a first-year student speaker, a graduating student, and an alum. And similarly, our CSIP Gula recognition ceremony, the picture you see on the slide, is an opportunity for graduating Latinx and Chicanx students to thank their parents, their tias and their tios, pretty much anyone who's made a significant impact on their success, and to serve as a role model for their siblings and extended family to share in the accomplishment of earning a baccalaureate degree. For many of our graduates, they are the first in their families to earn a university degree. And what makes this programming unique is that students can invite their entire family and select 2 people to walk across the stage with while we announce all of their names, the student's major, and their statement of appreciation and thanks to the people they're walking with across the stage. Next slide. Ultimately, we invest a lot of time in building intentional, horizontal, and vertical relationships at CSU Channel Islands that promote shared ownership for student success. And at the core of this work and these relationships is the ethos of innovating for student success. Thank you very much, and I'll pass it back to Sally.
All right, thank you, Amanda. Let's move now into the discussion section of our webinar. Now that we've heard the stories from 4 different campuses, let me start this with a question for Ed and Naima at Santa Fe College. And here's the question. What have really been your biggest challenges that you've experienced as you've rolled out your pathway and really started implementing comprehensive student support or student success programming? Ed, Naima?
Well, culture change is always difficult, and we have tried to, first of all, be clear that this is not any one person's job. There's always the perception on campus, or there might be the perception on campus that, again, back to the title of this seminar, that this is the job of student affairs, or it's the job of a specific program. But really, the challenges has been kind of just getting everyone to pull together, to have everyone realize that everyone is responsible for this. Part of that has to do with finding resources. It's always a challenge. Many of us in community colleges are in a declining or flat or declining enrollment environment, and so there's not a lot of new money. And so finding resources has been a challenge and an opportunity. But again, if you have a mission commitment to success and equity, you're going to be able to identify those resources because they're a priority for you as based on your mission and your values. What would you add? Thank you.
Naima, did you want to add anything?
Well, the only thing that I would add is that we are continually striving to increase the number of minority staff members that we have here, minority faculty members that we have here, to reflect the population that we serve. That would be all.
Well, I think that's a very good thing to keep in mind. Well, let's move across the country and across the Rocky Mountains to Utah. Roderick, at Salt Lake Community College, what's really been your greatest challenge during the time that you've had this unique role at the college and have tried to bring about greater results for all student success?
Right. Great question. I have a simple response to that, and it may sound kind of crazy, but the biggest challenge is people, and the greatest asset are the people. As been articulated before from Santa Fe, is that when you're trying to have some a cultural change, it's oftentimes people who are getting in the way. And my mindset is that yes, we can create structures to put in place, but it's the people that make those structures function. And I'm oftentimes of the mindset also to suggest that I would rather have somewhat of a broken structure and great people, because those great people make that system work. Whereas if you have a great system with the wrong people in place, you just have a great system with not anything getting accomplished. So to the degree that we can help bring folks along and think about things differently, even though it may impact or be something that's very antithetical to what they have historically known, we have to bring them along and meet them where they are, to a place where we can actually have that equity-minded orientation to really help them succeed. So the short answer, the greatest asset are the people, but also the biggest challenge is also the people.
That's a very wise response. Let me take us back to Florida here for a minute and turn to University of South Florida. Paul, you did a nice job of talking about ownership of student success on your campus, but you also showed us an administrative or organizational structure that seemed to help. And I'm wondering if you could reflect a little bit on why the previous, more traditional administrative structure wasn't working.
Sure, Sally. Well, frankly, it seemed that whatever we were doing previously or however we had organized ourselves, it still wasn't producing the results that we wanted and expected of our students. And so looking back on it, I now see that the previous structure relied too much on the goodwill and personalities of at least 3 different VPs or deans. And while my colleagues and I got along well, we also realized that too much depended on the 3 of us getting along well, and we just happened to do so because we liked each other. But I've seen here and elsewhere too many examples of where units weren't collaborating for a number of different reasons, ranging from real turf battles over budget to egos and personality clashes. And so we wanted to set up something that would outlive the 3 of us who were getting along pretty well, and set up something that would allow us to coordinate our efforts in a much more deliberate way. You know, we had been doing a pretty good job, but it still wasn't good enough. And by bringing everybody together in the way we have, it allowed us then to really drive a more deliberate conversation about what we needed to do to boost student success.
Thanks. I like your notion of planning for sustainability. Not something we think about, I think. Amanda, just so we can go to the other coast for a minute here, and all the way to the coast. What advice would you have for institutions that are looking to overcome some of these traditional barriers around ownership of student success?
Sure, thank you, Sally. So I will preface this by saying that we have the advantage of engaging the institution and building our culture from day one. So that really does bode well for some of our institutional and culture change efforts. But one of the things that I've noticed, I've been here since 2004, that as we grow, and we have grown quite a bit, that we need to be intentional about using larger frameworks and structures that promote campus-wide engagement in student success and equity. And part of that is making sure that there is visibility of engagement among your campus leadership in crossing those boundaries, because that really does matter and it sets the tone. And we never miss an opportunity to leverage external opportunities to create a sense of urgency, which also really helps engage in broader conversation and bring a lot of people to the table to discuss some of the pressing issues. And I think one thing, and Paul touched on this, is being clear about your values and working agreements for collaboration, and really focusing on centering on results and building a high-performing team that has the capacity, and building that capacity if that's where you need to put your strategic resources or investments, that can establish a record of trust and success in a really short amount of time. When we've seen teams develop a reputation for innovating and for producing high-quality results, that really does open the doors to buy-in and broader engagement, and for excitement around wanting to be part of that team or part of leading that effort. And so those are some of the words of advice that I would share with others in terms of how to engage others in owning shared student success and equity agenda.
Amanda, thanks. Some good things to think about. Stacy, do we have some questions for the audience that you'd be willing to pose?
We do. This question is for all of the panelists. In what ways are each of the institutions working with external groups and/or organizations to support your efforts, and what are some of the challenges associated with these efforts?
Hi, this is Naima Brown from Santa Fe College. We have developed an East Gainesville initiative as well as a Bradford County initiative. These are partnerships that we've developed in the community with pastors, with community organizations, and with schools that serve minority communities, so that we can share more information about what the college has to offer for people at different stages in their life, but also so that we can support the transition from high school through college. And it's very important for us that we develop a college-going culture to make it acceptable and to help first-generation students get the idea that college is for me. It's very different when we're talking about families that have individuals that have gone to college in their family. So having these partnerships has allowed us to reach a greater audience and to,
in some ways, leverage the things that the college has done and just kind of extend the work that we do into the community.
Thank you.
I can respond to that as well, Sally. This is Amanda. One of the ways that we've done a lot of work at our institution creating the shared agenda for student success and equity, but the next level of that was really rolling that out in our region. And so one of the ways that we're creating a regional commitment to student success and equity is partnering with our P20 Council, which is government, educators, leaders from this region. And through that, we've been able to develop partnerships with our community colleges, with our high schools, and other community-based organizations. And we're really, really intentional about what does it mean to even look at one of our larger populations, which is our transfer student population, and begin to design cross-institutional professional learning communities where our faculty have an opportunity to meet other faculty at community colleges in the region, or where we're looking at different student success interventions or aligning curriculum from lower to upper division courses. So we do a lot of intentional partnering. We share professional development in our region with our educators, high school and community college faculty. We do a lot of cross-institutional intersegmental partnerships, and we just recently, as a result of one of our regional transfer success summits, was able to go to our local school board and pass a requirement for ethnic studies as a graduation requirement for high school students to build a pathway to our Chicano Studies program at the community colleges and here at CSU Channel Islands. So we actually have a really broad-based agenda for partnering around student success and equity that's really felt throughout the region.
Thanks. Roderick, do you have?
Sure. Thanks for the question. There are a number of ways that we do reach out to the community and our external partners. And I can answer that in a number of ways, but I would say first and foremost, I guess the soft answer is that we make a very much intentional effort to reach out to families of our students. With us being open access community college, we understand that, as I mentioned before, a lot of our students are working and have multiple responsibilities beyond their education here at the college. So we really do reach out to the communities to suggest that, well, how do we best support not just the students, but also the families as well? And to help them understand that we are very cognizant of the fact that, our students do have multiple responsibilities. It is not to suggest that we're trying to take them away from their family responsibilities, but how do we also help empower the families to be supportive as well? And so, again, being a comprehensive community college, that may come in very different forms, whether it's talking about short-term intensive training for parents and even some of their spouses, to think about how do we break the chain of intergenerational poverty in which we do find some of our students in. And so that's one way. But then also with our workforce, we have a tremendous amount of partners within the workforce community. We find ourselves to be very nimble and responsive to market demands. So whether we're talking about construction trade, welding, surge tech, all those things are available to our families and communities. But then the other piece I would say is that we have to really be conscious of is how safe do our students feel, more specifically our DACA students, and help them to understand their rights within this state. So we do have a strong partnership with the local ACLU here, and also other law agencies that do come in and do seminars to talk with not just the students here, but then also the families about what are your rights as an undocumented student, and what can be shared and what cannot be shared. So we are very much intentional about reaching out and building community beyond the campus community. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that we do to contribute to student success here as well.
Thanks. Paul, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Sure, Sally. Let me just state the obvious. One of our external partners is the Foundation for Student Success, a great example of a learning community we've enjoyed and benefited from the conversations we've had with our colleagues, the other mentor institutions, but also the mentees that we have been working with. We approach this as a collective effort that we know we don't have all the answers, and so we love having conversations with other colleagues and institutions about what they're doing, always trying to learn how we can improve our performance and serve our students better. So thank you, Sally, for the FSS.
Well, thank you for mentioning that, and I'm glad to hear that you're weighing in on the value, because we're certainly learning a lot, and that's been great. Stacy, do you have another question?
Yes, and this is for Roderick. There's a couple questions around the retention audit and how it works. Specifically, what areas of the institution are audited, and also what are some critical data points?
Yes, great question. Thanks for the question. So when we did the retention audit, it was pretty much a chance for us to really get our heads around what's being done on campus. And so some of the questions that we did ask to kind of gain a better understanding of that is, first and foremost, what is being done, but then also how it's being done, who's doing what, where is it being done within the institution, and what's the impact of the project and initiative, and how is it resourced. And so from there, we wanted to essentially just kind of raise the awareness around the institution about the things that are being done, but then also were there places that we can actually leverage the resources? Because a lot of times, as maybe it's just Salt Community College, but we find ourselves working in silos quite often and maybe duplicating efforts. And so if we're really talking about a retention effort, could there be an effort that's done institution-wide that's leveraging resources, that's not duplicating efforts, and can not spreading folks thin? Because one of the biggest issues that we do find on campus is that people are overworked for sure, and we would say underpaid. So if we can think about how do we leverage the human capital and also the financial capital to really move the needle for retention, that was the whole point of the retention audit. But then also, it was to look at what are some of the gaps that are there, because we know that people are doing tremendous things around campus, well attended, but are they effective? Are they efficient? But then also, are we getting all the gaps that we could potentially fill as it relates to providing services for our students on campus? There was another component to that question that I forgot that quick. I don't know if I answered all of it, but does that answer the question or no? Hello?
Yes, yes, I think that's a wonderful answer. Thank you so much. To follow up on that, Roderick, someone wanted to know from you about what specific changes were made to the hiring approach to improve minority numbers on the staff. And then as a follow-up to that for the entire panel, how do you actively recruit faculty and staff that are representative of your student population?
Okay. Some of the things that are very just structural. One of the things that was taking place before I got here, even to some degree in my tenure here, is that the time between the applicant submitting their application and contact back to the applicant for an interview was taking way too long. And sometimes you lose quite a few very talented people as a result of that. So our intention was to really reduce the time from the application to the time of contact and also hire. In addition to that, we definitely put dollars towards more marketing for people who are applying for positions or putting out job descriptions nationwide. But then also thinking about how do we network better. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces, maybe to the second question as well, is how do we become ambassadors for our respective campuses or universities for that matter. And to the degree that we understand that as we go out to conferences and not just utilize conferences for professional development, but then also thinking about how do we network at these conferences. Because the thing is that once you put a job description out or a call out for a position, if you have not done the groundwork and the networking prior to that, you're almost too late. Because a lot of times, as we may know, people are applying for jobs and getting jobs based upon someone who they may or may not know for that matter. And so we really put forth the effort to really help faculty and staff, for that matter, as they're going out for professional development, but then also expand your network as you're going out to these places. Because otherwise, if you don't, then people do not get the opportunity to really understand how different or how diverse, I would say, Salt Lake City, Utah is. Because we also are fighting this big kind of notion or discourse of what it means to live in Utah. And people may say, well, why are you in Utah? But if you don't give them a different perspective of it, then they will continue to maintain that idea of what Utah is or what Utah isn't. So again, just to sum that up, we really did try to reduce the time to hire for our hiring policies, but then also very much intentional about how we are networking and how we are engaged in recruiting folks.
And I'm going to ask our other panelists to weigh in on this, but I do want to remind the members of the audience that we will be having a webinar coming up in the fall on really specifically on this topic and strategies that can work in a collective bargained environment and can work in a non-collective bargained environment. But let me move on to who wants to go next in terms of hiring strategies?
Sally, this is Amanda Quintero, and we're in a collective bargaining environment, and so we do need to deploy strategies that might look a little bit different than elsewhere. But the one thing I will say is we're currently, the CSU system is really tackling this challenge of how do we create a more diverse faculty that's representative of our students, our majority students that we're serving. And they recently made grants to about 8 of the 23 institutions called Advancing Faculty Diversity. And within the limitations that we have to work within, we had to pull together some strategies. And we are just at the point of putting a team together. So I think there will be information on the CSU Cal State University website as a whole, probably going into August, where people are going to be putting up the work and strategies that they're engaging in. But just building a little bit on what Roderick shared, we are going to be having a faculty ambassadors program that's going to go out and do a lot of intentional recruitment at various conferences for the types of positions that we're looking to hire, because that's one way that we have seen our numbers shift. It's that personal touch, that reaching out. The other is, some of the more structural and basic things about making sure that our commitment to inclusive excellence, to equity, to student success, diversity is front and center across all of our job descriptions. And so there's some of those things that are in the works, but I would say check back in with the CSU system website in a couple of months, because there might be some great strategies posted there.
Good resource, thanks. How about you, Floridians?
To say about stepping up recruitment and marketing efforts. We're trying to understand that talent comes not necessarily just from the academic job market, but from the professional job market, from friends of friends. And so we're trying to get outside kind of the traditional lanes that people come into academia. We are also launching a program that will do more outreach to the historically Black universities in our area, where we have a higher expectation of finding diverse candidates who are interested in teaching. One challenge that we have, as Naima mentioned earlier, is that we're really underrepresented in terms of our leadership and faculty. And so one way that we build momentum for this is we say, look, we have 40% minority enrollment and we have less than 20% minority faculty. That does help create impetus for improving in those areas. We also have metrics that our Human Resources Office helps us run. For any search, the Human Resources Office can supply a log of who has applied. And I think most human resources offices collect some basic demographic information about gender and so forth. And if sometimes there are cases where when we see that we have had a significant interest from diverse candidates in certain types of jobs, but if we've been unsuccessful in hiring those, then I think one option for colleges and universities is to kind of generate some expectations for accountability and say, look, 30% of the candidates for this job have been, let's say, minorities or men or women or whatever it may be. And yet, we don't see that diversity really reflected in the finalists who are being sent forward. And so you create some expectations and changes during the search process that should help you increase diverse hires.
Thanks. Ed or Naima? Either they're on mute or...
I concur with Ed. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I concur.
All right. Stacy, do you have another question?
Yes, this is for Amanda. For an entity like a Strategic Initiative Steering Committee, who is represented and who makes the decision about that representation?
That's a great question. And so it kind of depends. The larger structure that we have representation from our president's cabinet on that committee, and they are looking for staff, other administrators, faculty, and students. And essentially, they're choosing the representation on those committees. When it breaks out into the subcommittee group, we have a nomination process where anybody who's interested in serving on some of the subcommittees that are going to be looking at very specific issues can nominate themselves. And then again, that larger Strategic Initiative Steering Committee is responsible then for selecting a well-rounded team that has sufficient knowledge in the issues to be able to move the team forward. And so that's how we've deployed it. We have the steering committee structure, which is appointed by the president, and then the steering committee then accepts nominations to focus on very specific issue-based subcommittees. And people can volunteer their names or be nominated by others.
Thanks, Amanda. Stacy?
Yes, this is for Paul at University of South Florida. I have a few questions about your metrics. What office oversees the metrics? and who gathers that information and keeps the colleges accountable for that data?
Sure. Our Office of Institutional Research oversees the metrics and collects the data. And that office reports to our provost, and it's our provost then who holds the colleges and the deans accountable for their performance.
Great, thank you.
All right. Actually, Paul, would you say a little bit more about your IR team, if you can?
Sure. So it's a centralized office that works closely with mine. It's not a part of my shop, although I have some analysts in that shop. We centralize all reporting in through that office. So I can't report out without going through that IR office. But our goal in the IR is not just to report out these days. That IR office is now also providing us with actionable data that we use to monitor student performance and intervene in a timely way. And so their model of work is also being changed quickly and dramatically as we've adopted predictive analytics.
I kind of guessed that might be the case.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I could add some more. I saw another question on there. I might be getting ahead of this, but it's related to the analytics. I saw someone ask about moving off the plateau, how we boosted retention and graduation rates. And I would attribute the move to the use of predictive analytics by a newly created persistence committee, a cross-functional team with representatives from across campus. Every office that touches the life of an undergraduate student is represented there. And the IR office provides that group of people with weekly list of students who seem to be struggling. And the list is derived from a number of sources. Most importantly, perhaps, is the live data that they capture through our learning management system, which is Canvas. And through the work of that committee, using analytical insights from that platform as well as an in-house model, we've been able to intervene in a timely way so that we don't wait for problems to get worse and then we would lose a student. Now we're intervening as soon as we can get lists of at-risk students on day one if we would like, and that has really helped us to move the needle on retention and graduation.
Thank you. Stacy, do you have another one?
Yes, this is for Roderick. There's some interest in hearing more about the equity-minded practitioner designation at Salt Lake Community College. What does it mean to receive this designation? How does one earn it? And how has this impacted campus culture?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for the question. So this is something that's relatively new here at the college. And in terms of like what's the impact, we have not been able to measure that just yet because this is the first year that we're rolling it out. But I can definitely, whomever asked the question, I can definitely share with you whatever metrics that come up within the next year that we do collect. But in terms of what it is just a way of helping our faculty and staff to become more equity-minded in a series of modules, if you will. So it's not like one of those things that's just like a one-off where we have a speaker come in and we're done, or we may have one facilitation and then we're done. But it's a collective of courses, modules, and seminars that is within a cohort model. And so it's kind of like a 3 to 4 pronged approach where the initial engagement is very much discipline focused, where you may have someone, we'll say within STEM area. They may read a book or hear a lecture and then develop learning communities around that issue of equity and how it relates to STEM. And then from there, within that cohort, they'll move to another stage, whereas we are looking to help bring more awareness to these issues and how they're impacting our students on campus, and not just the students, but then also think about our pedagogical practices. And as I mentioned before, how we're constructing curricular design and course design, all those kind of things. And then the second piece would be the second or third stage at this point would be more experiential and individual stages where the cohort will be engaged not just within community learning, but then also thinking about the other aspects of identities and intersectionalities of identities on campus. So more of the safe zone training, undocumented student ally training, and all those things that will encompass our students on campus and their multiple and intersectional identities. And then the last piece would be more or less the advanced practitioner, where they will essentially take this information that they've learned over the course of the year and begin to really think about, how do I give back to the institution, and in terms of developing more training sessions, but then also being able to be reflective of their own work, their own syllabi for faculty, their own practices for staff and administration and policies for that matter, to really think about how do we begin to shift the things that we're doing to become more equity as it relates to the results of the work that we're doing. And so for us, again, we have not been able to measure what the impact is at this point, but this is something that's being rolled out this year, and we are hopeful that it will have an impact for sure. I know that this work is pretty much predicated or built upon the AAC&U work of equity-minded practitioners, and so we've just taken that and augmented it to a degree to really fit our institution. Does that answer the questions? I'm not quite sure.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
The next question is for Ed and Naima. How would you address the concern that programs such as Santa Fe's MBK program are putting lots of resources into one specific group of students? Also, who should house this type of program?
Well, this is Naima, and I would say that we point back to the data. The data indicates that there is a gap between achievement of Black students and of white students, but also there's a gap between Black females and Black males, and these gaps are extremely significant. And so we would be remiss if we did not put resources in to narrow that gap. And in terms of where it should be housed in an area that is going to be collaborative, because even though MBK is housed in student affairs, it actually has updates directly to the president and engages faculty and staff from around the college. We have to have mentors from around the college to be effective with that program. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question is really for everyone, and it's a difficult question. What is a realistic timeline for student success initiatives to make a significant impact? Many institutions who have made significant gains took years to get there, and yet some institutional leadership and boards expect similar initiatives to make a transformative impact within just one semester.
Boy, that's a great question. Paul, you want to start on that one?
I'll give it a shot. I think it depends on the metric. A retention rate, for example, you could expect to see progress on that within a year or two, right? If you wanted to start now, putting programs, practices in place to deal with the 2018 cohort that's going to enroll in August, you might be able to expect and actually produce some changes and improvements. But if you're talking about a 4-year graduation rate, for example, you're going to have to wait 4 years to see it, at least. There's a lot involved in that, and pulling all the pieces together is not easy. It takes some time, and so we often have to push back to our bosses and say, you know, give us some time, be patient, because this is like a super tanker, and it takes a while to change direction.
Ed and Naima, I know you all have been watching your data. What's your response to that one?
It's important.
I think you may. There you go.
Okay, thank you. I think Paul's advice to clarify what success measure you're talking about is important. You can look at something like same semester course level retention immediately. You can look at fall to spring retention obviously within 9 months. Fall to fall retention takes a whole year. So, you know, in terms of the kinds of programming that you're pushing out, you can clarify how you're going to evaluate the success of that programming, both informative and summative ways. I think also relevant here is the need to try to not just pilot it, but decide what you can commit to doing for all students. A success, you know, a true student success initiative ought to be transformative for the culture and the outcomes of a college or university. And so, again, if you're looking at your IPEDS rate, you know, whether it's it could be 3 years for community colleges, 6 years for universities. Yeah, that does take some time.
Amanda?
I agree with many of the comments that have been said. I really think it depends on the nature of the intervention and the specific issue that you're trying to solve. If you're looking at a first year experience program that's a year long, or a living learning community model, you do want to make sure that you have several cohorts go through that, so that you collect enough data so that you can begin to see what the significance is of the impact and what types of measures you're looking at. You know, we did a lot of assessment early on of some of our student success practices, but we wanted to see how it impacted graduation, and we were working with first-time freshmen, and so we had to wait a couple years before we could get any data, you know, related to graduation. But the one thing I will say is, you know, if you're doing institutional transformation culture change work, you're really looking at an investment of a minimum of 5 years. And I would think that you're really looking more at a 10-year timeline. And so having a clear sense of the direction of the university, what those strategic goals are, and that those are clearly articulated is really important, because of the time commitment involved. You don't want to lose sight along the way, or have mission creep, or have to change directions quickly. So having that external board buy-in, or whoever it is that helps set those strategic goals for your campus, just making sure that there's some understanding there. And then for us, we're part of a large system, and we recently rolled out as a system a Graduation 2025 initiative, which sets institutional goals for our campus for retention and completion and equity. And we are to eliminate all equity gaps in graduation by 2025. So I think that's about a 9-year framework there. So it just depends.
Yeah, thank you. And the 8 to 10-year time frame is what we found in interviewing campuses at the beginning of all of this. Roderick, do you want to add some comments there?
Yeah, and I'll just maybe take just a different spin on that, because I agree with everything that's been stated. But the other piece I would just say is managing expectations and being realistic to the question that's being asked. Because I think a lot of times we may have people with a presence, and also even our fellow colleagues within cabinet, who may have the expectation that we're going to turn this thing around tomorrow, or within a year of a program being implemented. But we have to be very realistic in terms of what that time frame is. And to your point, Sally, I mean, I think, and also Amanda, I mean, to change a culture, it does a minimum of 5 years, but I would say in theory, it would be about 8 to 10 years to really start to see a sustained approach, and also progress is being made within student retention. Because for one, we do have turnover, and as people do turnover within the positions that we are hiring for, it's almost as if we're trying to reorient folks into a new culture. And so if they're coming into a culture that is equity-minded, and they're not currently, then that does kind of disrupt some of the things that's happening. But overall, I would say the biggest piece is to manage those expectations, where people do not lose patience with the work, because it is going to take some time.
Thanks. And I want to go back to Roderick's wise way of talking about challenges, but also strengths. And that is, as he just said, managing expectations and the people. So the people are the challenge and the people are the strength. But as you move through that, as all of our panelists have indicated today, it's really critical to track what you're doing. And I know that inside some of the things that Amanda was saying just a moment ago, not only tracking it in the short run, but tracking it so that you can modify and improve what you're doing to make your interventions really make sense. I think we may have time for one more quick question. Stacy?
Yes, I have one more quick question to Amanda. Is there any specific Latino mentoring program at your institution linked to student success?
Yes, we have quite a few mentoring programs, a number of different flavors, and we actually have an umbrella organization for them called Peer Education and Equity Programs. Our mentoring programs are peer-led. Some of them are embedded in our first-year experience courses or second-year experience courses or transfer year experience courses, and part of their responsibility is to lead peer-led learning communities in those experiences outside of the classroom. They're also they also have their own co-curricular syllabus that they work with a faculty member on, and they're engaged in active learning techniques in the classroom to build a sense of community. And they also support students with different types of student success strategies to help with syllabus mapping and just understanding and navigating the hidden culture of the university. We have a drop-in peer mentoring program that is also peer-led, and it works closely with our academic advisors to reach out to students who are on academic probation. And they also have their own student success and engagement campaign, and they have a lot of different activities they do with students that are drop-in in nature to get them acquainted to university culture, academic expectations. And specific to Latinos, we have a Chicano Latino Faculty and Staff Association that we also leverage in terms of trying to match up students with Latino staff faculty mentors. And then we have a university culture program that provides community outreach and mentorship to community college students and to high school students in the region. So we have quite a few flavors, and it's a pretty large operation.
Amanda, thank you. And I want to thank all of our panelists this afternoon, or whatever time frame you're in when you watch or listen to this. But all of them, I think, have been very thoughtful in the way that they have approached telling their stories, and obviously emphasized the real need to pay attention to what you're doing. This webinar will be archived on the Foundation for Student Success website. And that again, I think is, yep, it's on the screen. We're gonna take a pause in the webinars for the summer, but we will be back in September. And in September, we'll continue to focus on some of the tough conversations on campus. And the first one is really gonna revolve around how do you get leaders on board with equity? And I think as a couple of our panelists also added to that, how do you control the expectations of your leaders to make them realistic? With that, I'm going to go ahead and close off our webinar, and thank you all for participating. And again, thank you, panelists.
Thank you.